Welcome to episode 52. I'm your host, Nikkei Lamodi, and today we're going to talk about what to do when you chronically feel like you are behind. So before we jump in and tackle all of this, I really want to first establish just this concept of being behind and feeling like you're behind. You know, there is a word for this. It's called being a late bloomer, and I have identified as being a late bloomer for decades. Now, the thing is, being an eldest daughter, the perception is that you're responsible, you're super organized, you're a high achiever, you're just excelling and doing everything in every area of your life the way that you're quote unquote supposed to. So as one who identifies as a late bloomer and is an eldest daughter, I have constantly been at this place for decades where I feel like I don't fit that exact model. Instead, I actually feel like I am behind. So the online definition for late bloomer is implying that someone should have already developed or grown in a certain area. And so this can literally manifest in so many different ways. Maybe you find yourself stuck in the thoughts of, I'm just late to the party, I'm running out of time, I'm falling behind, or maybe you even think everyone else is ahead, I'm behind my peers, I'm living in somebody else's shadow, which can cripple you when you're trying to take action because you're like, why can't I figure it out? I feel like I'm feeling at adulthood. Am I too late to start? Will I ever catch up? And it just leaves you feeling overwhelmed or ashamed or invisible or exhausted, unworthy, even discouraged. And so all of this comes up and affects the action that you take in the area that you may be feeling behind in. So what is alienating this pressure of chronically feeling behind? Well, it could be the societal timeline that's given to us. You know, be married by 28, buy a house by 30, have your kids by 32, make sure you're making six figures by 34, and even family and friends and the cultural and or religious implications that can be surrounding that family and friend dynamic. All of these things are vying for our attention in terms of, hey, are you meeting this timeline metric? Are you hitting this milestone at the appropriate time? So for decades, for me, I have felt chronically behind in the area of my finances, my career, my relationships, and specifically dating, and also in the area of my health and wanting to have the body that I know that I'm capable of in terms of prioritizing my health and wellness. And this has just left me constantly every single year holding the tension between feeling chronically behind, but also accepting that I'm right where I'm supposed to be. And so in the last couple of years, I've actually been shifting the action that I take in my life in these areas and have seen tremendous progress being made. And I want to talk about what 3 things really helped me to start seeing progress in the areas of my life that I chronically felt behind in after decades. But before I share what those 3 things are, it wouldn't have been as effective if I didn't reframe my mindset around being chronically behind, right? I had to accept that me being a late bloomer didn't mean that something was wrong with me. It didn't mean I was broken or unfixable or doomed. And that reframe then helped me be able to tackle the 3 things that allow for me to take the appropriate and intentional action to see progress in the areas of my life that I felt behind in. Because when I was thinking that being a late bloomer meant that I was broken and unfixable, that just made me feel invisible, unworthy of anything good, and really just embarrassed about where I was in comparison to where society or friends or family expectation said that I should be. So here are the 3 things that helped me be able to start to see progress in these areas of my life over the last 4 years. The very first thing was a combination of acceptance and forgiveness. So we're going to talk about acceptance first and then forgiveness second. So acceptance is essentially changing reality requires first accepting reality, right? Because if you are not accepting the reality, the factual reality of what's happening around you or to you, then problems are really difficult to see clearly. And if you aren't seeing problems clearly, then it's really hard to solve those problems or come up with solutions. And so in simplest terms, if you don't accept your factual reality of what's happening, it's very, very hard to become curious about what other possibilities or solutions are available to you to then solve said problem or start to take action in a different way. And when you have the acceptance and you work through that, this may not be instantaneous. It may take weeks. It may take months. When I was caregiving back in 2021, I worked with this with my therapist for like 2 months. Next, you need forgiveness, right? Which is stop holding on to the shame that you are putting on yourself, the past you who maybe did make certain decisions that or mistakes that you feel have contributed to you chronically being behind. But forgive that past version of you so that present you can actually move forward. It's so hard to like move forward with excitement and hope and zeal when you are so ashamed of past you and the decisions that you made. And it makes me think about in the area for me of finances, I held on to so much shame surrounding my debt for years, and didn't realize that even though I was consuming new knowledge, reading finance books and listening to finance podcasts, all these things, I couldn't figure out why I still wasn't seeing the carryover of the change in my actual financial habits. And it's because I hadn't forgiven past me for the decisions that she made, right? Understanding she made those out of survival or out of lack of financial literacy, all of these things. So forgiving yourself really allows for you to release past shame so that present you can move forward essentially with the lessons and the wisdom, and that can inform the action that you take. So those two go together, acceptance and forgiveness. And then the second thing was knowing my own why for what I wanted in a specific area of my life. One of the areas that I said that I felt chronically behind in is in my career. You know, it felt like everybody was sure about where they were going. They did that, and then they were either moving up or they were able to create stability to increase their income over time. Whereas for me, I had a lot of challenges getting into PT school. Then I had to work in the regular workforce, like in retail for a while until I got into PTA school. And then I eventually went into working in physical therapy. And then 2020 came and I had to relocate to Ohio to caregive for my mom, which then meant I needed to pivot to a job that would allow for me to have the time flexibility to be there for her and to support her full time as a caregiver, which meant I had to leave one industry and pivot to a next one and start over. And I was just like, I'm literally, instead of moving up like the rest of my peers and colleagues that are gaining, I'm literally putting in time and effort and then going backwards and starting behind. But this was me feeling like my career progression had to match societal expectations, what friends were doing. And I had to sit and ask myself, why do you want your career path to be in healthcare? What is it that you desire for a career? What does that look like for you? What do you want that to, how do you want that to impact your, not just your bank account, but your life and your ability to have time, freedom, and flexibility? The minute that I started answering this from a place of what I wanted based on my own values and desires, it started to change what that answer looked like. And I started to see that, oh, I can make where I'm at right now in this new industry work for me. And so that then opened up me seeing, oh, I can ask to move to a different department, and led to me being able to get a promotion that led to a 5-figure salary bump. So knowing your own why for what you want in a particular area of your life you feel behind in is so important, because it will influence the decisions that you make. If you know you feel behind in not being married and the fact you don't have kids, but what if you don't want kids? Have you even asked yourself that? Right? Have you asked, why do you want to be married? Why do you want to have financial stability? Why do you want your debt to be paid off? So finding your own voice in the areas of your life you feel behind in and knowing why you want what you want is so important. And then the third thing was growing my belief. So I had to grow my belief that I deserved the things that I wanted in the area of my life that I felt behind in. Because what was happening is subconsciously, I believed that it was my destiny that I was at where I was at, and I didn't deserve anything better. So I just accepted what was happening to me and was just like, what's the point? This is my destiny. This is what I deserve. And because I didn't subconsciously even believe that I deserved different or better, then my actions just followed that. So you have to grow your belief. And you're probably wondering, okay, Nikkei, well, how do I do that? Well, simply put, and I'll just be really succinct here, but you want to look at the evidence in your life that you can do hard things. You want to look at the milestones you achieved despite the adversity that you faced. You want to write down reasons why you deserve to have the high-rise apartment or the homestead or the job where you're making 6 figures, right? You want to write those things down. You want to reflect on those things and bring forth that evidence for your brain, and that thus helps grow your belief. Now, this isn't an instantaneous thing, just like the acceptance. It's going to take repetition. It's going to take you coming in to recorrect a negative thought pattern that your brain has been wired to believe. And this is all very neuroscience based. I won't get too deep, but right, this is neuroplasticity. This is you rewiring your brain and to be able to start to think differently, right? There's an area of your brain that always is scanning your environment to affirm the narratives you already believe. And so if you're by establishing the evidence, you can do hard things and saying, wow, I remember when I graduated from PTA school, when I didn't even have a car, wasn't able to work, but yet here's what happened. Here's the decisions I made. Here's how I overcame it and was still able to graduate and sit for my boards, right? That's evidence you're collecting to grow your belief. So all 3 of these things I did before I was ever like, okay, set the goal, go do the goal. And we are also tempted to do that, to just take action, right? To hurry up and change it because we feel uncomfortable or we're just tired of being behind. But doing these foundational 3 things helps you to have better chances of success and more sustainability in changing the area of your life that you feel behind in. Using these 3 things and a whole host. So doing these 3 things allow for me to see progress made in the areas that I have always felt chronically behind in, from my finances to my health, to my career, to my relationships, and specifically with dating. And so it works if you work it. Okay, it works if you work it. And once you set this foundation, then when you do go to set goals and things like that, you will see more progress being made, right? You will see more progress being made. And I do want to add in that the goal is not to erase the feeling that I feel behind. The goal is to lean more into being instead of just the feeling, changing the feeling, right? So if you think that, well, you're never going to not feel like you're not behind again, like that may not be the case. There's some times where I'm like, man, I feel behind, but I don't let the feeling override the being part, right? The being in the acceptance, the being in growing my belief, the being in knowing my own why, and the being in forgiving myself, right? Which then allows for me to continue to take action regardless of the fact that I quote unquote feel behind. So I'm so excited to share this with you and talk more about this and just help you feel like you're not failing as an eldest daughter if you feel chronically behind in areas of your life. You're not, right? You are right where you're supposed to be. I can help you make progress in breaking free from being behind in an area of your life in months and not years in one-on-one coaching. I have several one-on-one options available that fit your schedule and budget, and I would love to help you break free from being behind in an area of your life, whether it relates to your health, your finances, or relationships. So head to the link in the show notes to book a free consultation call, and I will share with you what your specific game plan will be that we will work on together to make that happen. Thank you for listening in, and just remember your timeline as a late bloomer is unique, not faulty.